want to try to start with like another little, like we started doing noises now, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna see how many noises I can come up with where we.
People are like, I'm done listening. This is dumb.
They're like, these noises are getting weird.
Or
Start
you
like
guys,
barking or something.
we promise we won't get that weird.
No.
But my question today is about a dog. So today we're gonna be let me get this title right. Hold on. I'm gonna get it right. Do you have it? I feel like the title is okay. The title is very important because said wrong, it could lose its context. So I'm gonna actually read it. And I can't find the right one. What the fuck? Okay. So our title today, or our topic today, is taking ownership, how to dislike people less, which I really love this topic. I think we hear people say things around this, like people just suck. Or my question today is based off of something a client told me yesterday. Which is, would you rather do business with humans or dogs? And why?
That's great. Man, this is hard. I mean, as you know, I'm pro dog. Most days more than people. This episode's probably directed at me.
It's not. It's not.
Yeah. No. I mean, I love dogs. I love my dog a lot and spend a lot of time with her. But that being said, you know, people, even as frustrating as like the interpersonal aspects of dealing with people are and can be. We're going to get into that because I get that it's challenging, and that sentiment, I'm sure, comes from the fact that dogs don't have opinions, right? Dogs don't talk back. Dogs don't push us. Dogs don't. Dogs are there for us, and that's great.
I don't know. My dogs push me,
yeah,
Taylor.
Yeah, your dogs are ass. Yeah, it's true. Your dogs are assholes. Your dogs are not there for you. Your dogs are there for themselves. They're trying to get theirs.
Sorry, go back to what you were saying.
Most dogs. Yeah, but no, the people piece. I mean, I understand. I think where that comes from, and yeah, absolutely, it is challenging. But ultimately, we get so much out of people, working with people. Specific to your question, the impact that working with people has on us is certainly far greater than the impact that a dog can have, as much, again, as I love dogs. So yeah, I mean, it's people, right? And again, it comes with its challenges. But I think that sentiment also comes from a place of frustration. It comes from a place of what I imagine would be not being around the right people that inspire you, that push you in the right direction, like, because you want people that move you to take action in the direction of your goals, in the direction of your vision. So certainly if you're around people that just are a drain on you, absolutely. Right. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you and I know for a fact, we certainly had those days where you're not in environments where you're surrounded by people that are exciting and you're like, dude, I just want to go home and hang out with my dog. Like, this is brutal, like this isn't doing anything for me. So I get it. But ultimately people, because surrounded by the right people, that's when things really start to come alive. True. But so that really takes us to where we're going, right? Because this is what I just realized this actually. That's what the point I just made is we have to take ownership over like how we show up and the people that we choose to be around and the people on our teams. And when we are frustrated, when we're like, I'd just rather work with dogs, like we have an ownership stake in that. And we don't get to just cop out and blame people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not people's fault. Ultimately, if we're not in the right rooms, we need to find a different room,
Mm-hmm.
make some different decisions. So, Christine, take us down this path. What does ownership look like? This is your topic. I'm excited. I think again, it's directed at me. I know that I've said this a lot. I know, like you're using like codes, like a client in quotes. You're like, that was you, motherfucker.
I had a client last week ask me, "What did you do your podcast on me?" I was like, "I did not, but it does very much align. I have a very clear ideal client. So if you feel personally attacked, it's because you're probably my ideal client, or our ideal client, because that there's commonalities in that. No, it is funny. The other place that I was thinking, like when we started talking about this topic, was I've had a couple of people, probably you included, tell me it's not my dogs are assholes, like we've already talked about. But it's not your dogs that are the issue, it's you. And it really is. And it's funny in leadership, because we're like, we go in and like typically as leaders, we're like, my team freaking sucks. And you're like the team is the problem. And if you're a leader, you have felt that way. Even if you want to say you haven't, you felt that way. You feel like your spouse or your team or whoever is the problem. With dogs, you're like, it's really clear. And I take no offense when they're like, you are the problem. And I'm like, of course, because the dog's got like a pea brain. Clearly, I am the problem. Like, I have the intellect to know that, like, if I just train them well, they probably wouldn't be the problem. But like, the issue is I am not good at training dogs. So they're a pain in my ass. But I think with leadership, we're like, everyone else is the problem. I am not the problem. But in reality, if we would just treat leadership like we do dog training, and I don't mean that with any, like, your team is not a dog. Let me be very clear. That is not what I'm advocating. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you are the dog trainer and you need to take ownership. And if we had the same mentality, people would just generally suck less and we would like them more, because we would be in control of our life and destiny instead of waiting for everybody else to show up. And I think that every time I start to get irritated with somebody else, I just have gotten or tried to be really good about like thinking about, like, if you're pointing one finger at someone else, there's three more pointing back at you, and like therefore you just need to take ownership and like quit waiting for people and quit being a victim to your circumstances. It's just not serving us, specifically in leadership. And like, oh, I just like posted a Gary Vee quote. I wish I would have remembered it. I'm going to pull it up because it was so good. But I just think that there's such an opportunity to like stop whining and being victims. And I'm not saying like shit's not hard, because it is. But I think there's just an opportunity for us to enjoy all of leadership if we were just to stop and think about what we can control and stop waiting for everyone else. So I don't know, like we have talked about this for a little while. Taylor and I were doing a bourbon and bitch session on like Friday nights at the end, and then we realized that it probably wasn't serving us because we were just complaining. The quote that I just posted from Gary Vee is, one of the quickest ways to know someone will be limited in their achievements is predicted in how much they blame others or complain. And I was like,
oh, that's fire.
yep. Like, I literally just saw someone a couple of days ago that I hadn't seen in a while. And like the first thing they did was complain about their boss. And I was like, this has been your fucking narrative since I've known you. And I've known you for like 20 years. And you've jumped companies like 20 times. And it's always the same thing. It is always the boss's fault. And this conversation is actually not just, we're not just talking about the CEO here. We're talking, if you are a leader, AKA a human in a company, this applies to you. Like, quit being a victim to your circumstances and take ownership. And you know how irritated I get at like all of the posts and all of the memes of people like maximizing their time away from humans and like just like getting through their day and sitting on the toilet, hiding from their team. I'm like, oh God, you guys, like, there's got to be a better way to do life. Like, I can't, like, your time is more valuable. I can't understand if you don't like your team that much, or you don't like your culture, or you don't like your job, then make a freaking change. Like, your life is too short and too long all at the same time to like just sit and not do the thing, like do the things we love and the things that we care about. And I think that like leadership does that a little bit better. Like top leadership does that a little bit better, but I wouldn't say it's great by any means. But we've seen that so much, and Instagram is just full of all of the memes and all of the reels about how we can just like maximize PTO. And I'm like, is that what we're living for? Like, come on, there's got to be more to life. Like, am I the only one that just looks at this kind of stuff and I'm like, there's got to be more than life than like calculating PTO and like being stuck in this realm where we're hiding in the bathroom so we don't have to deal with our team. Like that does not sound fun. So I don't know. Do you agree with me, or is there like your thought, like disagree, agree? Where do you stand?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, ultimately, this is there's a lot of thoughts going through my mind. Um, One is um, that we one, I think it's like expectation mapping, which we've talked about. But I do think that there is an element of setting expectations in alignment with reality. And the reality of our work environments is that they involve people. And so you
Hmm.
can decide to take charge of that and take control over that narrative and be better at that aspect. Um, or you can decide to go hide in the bathroom. Like, which one gives you the better outcome? Um, and I just I don't see, is it, again, can it be frustrating? Sure. But to what end does it serve us to continue to be frustrated and not just work on taking ownership over how we show up, over how we communicate, over how we ask for support, over all of the aspects that involve dealing with people? And there are many, and it is nuanced, and it is a muscle that continually has to be worked. However, the outcome on the other side of working that muscle is far greater than just being mad about it and hiding from it. Because unless you work by yourself, which, I mean, there's not even really like that doesn't even happen, right? Like there's
No,
still
you always
vendor.
have a client or
Yeah,
someone.
there's client, there's vendors, there's somebody you're talking to that you're getting your stuff from. There's some version, you don't, it's not solo. Um, and so it serves you to be better at that. And I think to shift your mindset. And I actually really, I mean, I took a bit of like a personal anecdote. I had a bit of a pause when I was building one of my coaching companies. I started out and I actually very intentionally and purposefully, it was just me for like a year or so. Now I had just come off of like a high scale, like high growth technology company. And I thought very intentionally about whether or not I wanted to involve other people. And what I'm, specifically, I mean like building a team around me. And because I had had some experiences that were not that great in my previous company. I'd had some frustrations with people. I'd had some partnerships that didn't go well. I'd had some investor relationships that weren't ideal. I'd had, and it's normal struggles, but they wore me down and they were hard and challenging. So I sat with that. And ultimately, where I landed, I was like, I worked quote unquote by myself. Again, not total isolation. It was client facing. I was doing things, but I didn't have a team. It was just me, and just ran at like the solopreneur thing for a while. And I got really clear on the fact that that just wasn't where it was at. And honestly, I felt really flat because I wasn't truly sharpening any of the skills I needed to reach my goals.
Mm.
I was hiding. And by not being pushed by people, by not inviting people in, by not providing opportunities for people to grow, by not casting my vision, um, more broadly and in a bigger fashion, and inviting more people into that vision, like I was playing small and I was going to stay exactly where I was at. And it was, I recognize it was totally linked to 100% the people that I invited in and my ability to get over my shit over working with people. And and of course, since then there have been any number of challenges, but ultimately I know for a fact that I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things had I stayed where I was at. I would have
Mm.
stayed exactly where I was at, and that was a decision for me, like for my goals as a business owner. But yeah, I just think I think it is a disservice to our full potential when we hide behind the fact when we hide behind the narrative that our team sucks or people suck or what. Like, okay, be better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work on it. Right? Like if you're in a leadership position, again, like you said, that's anybody. If you're working with somebody else, if it's you and one other person,
Mm-hmm.
you're a leader. You have a responsibility in that relationship, as does the other person. Um, so let's be better. Let's work on it. What would it look like to change that narrative? And what could, in that example, like what could the two of you accomplish if you actually took ownership over your roles as leaders in that relationship and actually stepped up and stepped into your full potential, and what would
Mm-hmm.
be possible if you did it together? And I think the same applies for teams of 2 or 2,000. Um, like I know that to be a fact. We see it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I mean, to your question, I totally agree. And I just think, again, I just don't think that it is a narrative that gets us anywhere. To what end, and I think about, there's, I don't, as a quote, it's like a well-known thing. It's like, if you can choose to be upset, you can also choose to be glad or grateful, right? It's an emotion. So
Mm-hmm.
if you could choose to be sad, you could also choose to be happy. I'm not saying there's not external factors that create that, but to the same extent, you can create external factors that eventually, once you sit in that sadness, you can be happy again. You can be right, like, and it's I see it that way, where it's a choice, and in the same way you've chosen to say that people suck, you could also choose to say that people are incredible. People, without them, I wouldn't be able to do these things, or I'm inspired by these people, or I'm able to find these people in the world. Do you think part of it makes me think, one of the things you and I say a lot is, this is, I think, certainly was like originally your quote, but what you look for, you'll find. And it kind of
One.
just struck me that, like, that's where, we're talking about that some, like, what role does that play in attracting the right people? Because there is a piece of that. Like if you're surrounded by shitheads, like, yeah, you probably are frustrated. Like, maybe you're not gonna. That's gonna be tough. So there's an
Yeah.
attraction piece. What role does that play in the ownership, like in the conversation that we're having?
Yeah. And even if you're surrounded by shitheads, then it's probably because you have not actually taken ownership before and you attracted someone out of your limited state of being, right? Like you are either, I say this all the time, like there's no pause on impact, and they're like you're either going to attract from your limited space and your limited beliefs, or you're going to attract from your vision and like the mission that you want to accomplish. And if you're attracting from your limited place, chances are you put people in those seats, or you said yes to a position from that place and you get to be right about something. So I think, and then we do find what we focus on, right? Like we are gonna, it's the whole exercise. If you haven't done this, like close your eye or like look around the room and find everything that's blue. Just take a second, look around the room, find everything that's blue. Now close your eyes. Now tell me where all the red is. And you literally will not be able to find the red because, or even remember, you might say something at just like have an answer. But I think that most of the time we're looking for the blue when like really we should be looking for the red, and we would just have more fun. And I think it's amazing to see what happens even when we have someone who's really challenging. Like we actually just had this come up with a client. He had worked with someone for like 17 years, and the last 3 years have been hell. And the last 3 years had overrode, the many, many years that he had worked with this person before. And all of a sudden, I was like, well, what about all the other years that like you've learned his character and he was super generous? I'm like, tell me who that person was before. And like instantly they're like, oh shit, like this is actually a really good person. And I like have forgotten who they are. And to his defense, like that person had been really shitty for the last 3 years because of some of the like challenges and stressors and moving into a different place in leadership. And so I think it can be really challenging because we also kind of hold people to that. Like people, we dislike people because we see them, a version of them. And as leaders, it's our job to take ownership and actually sharpen those people into the best version of themselves. So if we're literally seeing this person on our team and we're like, they're lazy, and then you're showing up and treating them that they're lazy and you're talking to them that they're lazy, guess what? They're probably going to show up as more lazy. And so if we actually, I say this about my kids and my husband, like it is our job in every area, every circle to show up and remind the people around us who they are truly at their best and not remind them of what they're screwing up. It's our job. There's those like, there's those few off conversations, those difficult conversations that we might need to have. But if you're reminding someone of who they are at their worst and you're reminding them and like you're tracking all of that stuff and you're looking for those ways that they're messing up and you're like really looking for it and you're focused on that, guess what? You're going to find and you're going to call that person into that. Therefore, people are going to suck and like you're going to dislike them. And if they really truly suck, then like make a change. That's part of taking ownership. And I think that we have a very wide pendulum between glorifying the like great resignation and like, if I'm mad, I'm going to just like tap out and people suck and this culture's toxic and toxic leaders. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like also you find what you are as well. Like to your point of attracting, if you dislike something in somebody else, it's probably because it's something you dislike within yourself. Like there is scientific evidence, psychological evidence that the things we like in others, we probably like about ourselves. The things we dislike in others, we probably dislike in ourselves. So if you really dislike your team, chances are you probably dislike yourself in the same ways. So how can you show up and actually make those changes within yourself, take ownership over those things? And sometimes like we take too much ownership. Like there's also like a false responsibility in that too. And so I think we have to be honest with ourselves. First part of ownership, I think AA had it best. Like, you got to like recognize the problem. You got to figure out what the problem is and then change it. Take ownership over the solution. And I think that leads us to like, if you're just problem focused and you're like, my grandpa used to always say, like, don't catch yourself complaining. Like he's the most positive person. He's like 90 years old and like still works. And he's just like, couldn't be more happy about it. Like he could just be like the happiest little like worker, farmer, like just so happy, worked like 100 hours a week, never complained about it. But I think so much we're like, to your point of emotions, we have forgotten that you don't have to feel that way. You actually have control and ownership over how you feel. And no one can make you feel a certain way. You're allowing them to make you feel that way. You're allowing that. You have ownership over that. And we are not our feelings. And I think that's something that we don't talk enough about. Like, oh, you triggered me. No, you have a trigger within inside you. You need to take ownership and heal that so that you can show up fully. Quit being a victim to the things that are happening around you. They're not happening to you, they're happening for you. And if we take that perspective, we get to take ownership over the things that are happening around us and for us versus being a victim and saying they happened to us. And I get it. There's some really shitty things that happen, but we have control and we can like reframe those things too. So yeah, I'm so passionate about that because I hate feeling stuck. Like I hate feeling sad. My son's reading a book and he's like whining about it. He's like, I'm like, why don't you want to read this book? He's like, it's a sad book. And I was like, so? He's like, sad books are the worst. And I was like, then feel different about it. But I think that like there's always an opportunity for an upgrade. We have to be committed to looking for it, right? Like we can reframe the sad book. I'm like, is there a happy ending? Yep. Okay, great. Focus on getting to the end. See what the happy ending is. Like get excited about that happy ending and like shift the way you're seeing this because perspective is everything, especially when you literally can't stand people and you're like in that season where you're like, everyone sucks. Nobody's supporting me. Great. How do you change that? How do you take ownership? What are the questions that you need to ask yourself to get clear? So, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, this is a topic I'm very passionate about because I just hate being stuck. Like, fuck
Yeah.
being stuck.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good point. Like again, to the ownership piece, you that emotion, albeit very real, is just a response,
Mm-hmm.
and that response can take on any number of forms. It can be frustration. Um, it can also be opportunity. It can be excitement for change. It can be the recognition of a new a new path to go down, right? If you're like, well, this is frustrating, this isn't working, well, then your response could equally just be, great, now let me pursue the thing that does work. Let me get really clear on that. Let me lean in to what will make me excited, or help me be excited. I think that's the other thing is as I say that, I recognize so often that people wait on external things to make us feel a certain way, right? So we're like waiting on work to make us feel fulfilled. No, like decide to find value in the work that you're doing, decide to lean in, decide to find growth opportunities, decide to show up in a way that's in alignment with how you want to feel, and then let that thing, like, watch how it changes, right? There's no external thing that's going to make you feel a certain way, right? It's like you don't get out of bed in the morning and then wait around to be happy. No, like get out of bed and find it. Do something that makes you happy. Take action in the direction of the response that you want. And I think we get, in the workplace, we get very frustrated by external things that we've decided create a particular response within us. And that's a malleable response. You don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with those people. Now again, I'm not not giving credence to those feelings. You can have them, but you can also move on, right? You
Yeah.
you don't have to live in them, like you said. Like we are not our feelings. You can be triggered, but you can also recognize that there is an antithesis of that, which would be your values. And that's, some of the work that we do is side by side, there's a corresponding value. You have tools, or you can have tools that can get you out of that space. And these are just responses. And I think in it why we are saying that is because what it does when you shift your mindset is it gives you your power back. You don't
Yeah.
you're not hamstrung by your situation, by other people's reactions or responses or behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that person did piss you off. That's a them thing. You get to decide how long you hold on to that frustration. And it probably doesn't need to be as long as we're holding on to it. We can decide what to do with it, right? We can make a choice. And there's a tremendous amount of freedom in that, to know that we truly have, you know, largely unlimited opportunity to navigate situations and scenarios in any number of ways in alignment with the path that we want to take, in alignment with who we want to be, how we want to feel, the opportunities we want to create. It just requires taking ownership. The reason that we do that is it is a hell of a lot easier to just be mad about it, because the real fact of the matter is that it requires a fair amount of friction, and it requires a real desire to be someone different, to take a different action, to create a different outcome. Right? We've
Yeah.
talked about that a lot. It's like, to be someone different, you have to do something different. So if you just sit around and be mad, well, you're not going to get anything different. If you just sit around and be victim to those circumstances, if you sit around and say that your team sucks and you'd rather work with dogs, well, you're going to be right there. That's not going to. I mean, and I think, I think about this with myself all the time. I'm like, I don't deserve some other outcome if I'm not willing to take action to change my circumstances. I deserve to be right where I'm at if I'm just going to be mad about this.
I know, that's my favorite thing you say is like, you're like, you don't get to be mad about it. And like, sometimes I'm like, yes, I do. I get to be mad. I want to be mad. But
yeah, I've heard. There's some like great guidelines that I've heard. And one in particular, I guess, is, stay in it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Be mad. Absolutely. Those are fine feelings. Be sad, be frustrated, be mad, be angry, be the things. Be it for 24 hours. You get a day.
Well, yeah. Or less,
then,
like depending on, I'm like 5 minutes. Be pissed.
Well, yeah.
Get it out.
Yeah,
I like to journal.
Yeah. If some if somebody just, absolutely. Like, to the fullest extent, like the biggest letdown, like give it 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then take another action. If Sally in accounting, like, poo-pooed on your lunch that you had, and she like made fun of your salad, like that's like a 1 minute thing. Like, don't give that 24 hours. But
Sally salads, so she can.
I feel like I default to Sally in accounting. Like, there is somewhere in this world a Sally in accounting, and I'm truly sorry. I think you're amazing, Sally. You're doing the Lord's work. like one day Sally in accounting is going to listen to this and be like, these motherfuckers. Like,
we're going to be at a conference and some lady is just going to throw a drink in your face. You're going to be like, what the hell? I'm like, that was Sally in accounting, guaranteed.
And when that happens, I'll only be upset about it for no more than 24 hours. I'll take full ownership over the fact that I've now made a recurring theme. No, Sally, I love you. You're doing great work. Keep it up. You're crushing it.
So let's like talk through like some real examples of things like where people were just like people sucked and like we disliked people. And then we decided to like take ownership. Like, what happened? How do we do it? Like, let's give some real life examples. Cause I think sometimes this is a very abstract conversation. You're like, yeah, that sounds great. But like, also, I don't know how to do that. Like, what does that tactically look like? So I have like a couple of examples in my head, but like, do you have any examples where you're like, I felt stuck. I felt like people sucked. And I decided to like take ownership and it changed everything. Like, what happened? How'd you do it?
I do. A specific example popped into my mind as soon as you said that. And one is, had a guy that worked with me with one of my businesses, and him and I did not, our personalities were not aligned. It was very, very hard for me to communicate with him. I found him very frustrating. We worked very closely together. And the fact of the matter is, let me preface this by saying, I didn't bring him into my team appropriately. It was a quick hire. I needed someone to fill the role. I would do it very differently now. And I could have dodged this bullet. So I'll start again by like, you attract what you're looking for. I was looking for someone quickly. That's what I got. I got the quality to which I was I was willing to like pour into and dedicate to the hiring process. So that was on me. But I did learn a lot because I was very, very frustrated. I like dreaded calls with this person. It always like really triggered me, in quotes, because it just like really rubbed me the wrong way. And then I decided, I was like, you know what? Instead of, I'm going to spend a lot of time with this person. And while I don't think that this person is the long-term answer, the long-term fit for my team, one, I'm going to look to see where they are providing value. So instead of focusing on the negative, I'm going to look for the value. The fact of the matter is that despite him and I not getting along very well, he actually worked very well with other members of our team and was a great kind of mentor role and really great in like the collaborative environment for other folks of the team. So the one thing I did was like, well, I'm just going to remove myself. I'm going to let him run with that. I actually don't need to be on those calls. It's better for me. And he's actually providing a lot of value for these other members of the team. It's just a me thing, right? Like, and so the first thing was recognizing it's a me thing. This was not a systemic issue. Other people actually thought he was great. That's fine. That's a me thing. Then I was like, okay, let's look for value. Okay, so instead of focusing on the fact that he rubbed me the wrong way and that's all I could see, I took a step back and I was like, where is he providing value in this particular instance? A lot of value on the collaboration side of the team. He was like a great kind of team leader. People looked up to him. Okay, great. And then I was like, okay, what can I do? I know this isn't going to last forever. I wasn't in a place where I felt like I should fire him. Because again, I also recognized it was a me thing. So I was like, it's a little reactive. So then I was like, what can I do to put him in a place? How can I pour into him in a way that puts him in a place where he leaves me better than I found him? So I'm going to send him out into the world eventually with more skills, more resources, more confidence, more know-how, more whatever to be better so that I can still be in alignment with my mission and my vision. And I just focused on those things. I focused on removing myself when it wasn't necessary because it was friction filled. And I actually was dragging him down in a way that was unfair to him. If I showed up to those team calls, that was unfair to him because I was grumpy about it. Everybody else was fine. So if I just left, not left, if I never showed up, I was like, hey, take this. I'm going to give you autonomy here. He actually shined really brightly there. Again, look for value and then really just focused on impact. So I took on more of a mentorship role. A lot of the friction was around how we saw certain parts of the business and different kind of infrastructure things, but I could teach him a lot and he respected me for that. And I knew that we worked well in that particular kind of relationship. So I just leaned in there. And that lasted for another while, a year probably or so. And he actually had a great impact. He taught the team a lot. I actually learned a lot through kind of mentoring him, and it sharpened my skills. It changed my mentality. I wasn't grumpy anymore. There were certainly times where I was, would have moments, but I was able to come back to those things that really worked. And so there's several versions of that, but that's kind of, I've taken that approach actually a few times, even when it wasn't a quote unquote wrong hire. There's just been some instances where like personalities clash and I could have been mad about it. I could have stayed grumpy, but I decided to very tactically shift my involvement in that person's role in the business, how I invite that person to show up in the business and with the team and the role that I take in relationship to that person. Like how do I interact with them in a way that allows me to change my circumstances so that I can change the narrative and see it through a different lens. And that's been massively impactful.
That's so good. That's such a great example. And it's so real. Like those things happen every single day where we just show up and we're like, oh, I don't want to be on this call. Like I don't want to be leading this person anymore. And just creating a space where that person actually gets to shine. And like the crazy thing is you had all the power to like fire that person or get rid of that person. And like you chose to that's such a great point. Like we talk about that all the time is returning people back to the world better than you found them. And I think as leaders, we have such an opportunity and a responsibility to do that. I think it's like, I don't want your shitty employee that you hurt. Like, can you not hurt employees? Because I have to hire them next. And like, I think about that. I'm like, if I hurt this person in the like transition of, even if they're not the right fit, like I don't have to make them wrong just because they're not the right fit for me or my team. Like you're saying, he was a great fit for the team. He wasn't a good fit for you. And so if we do that poorly, now we have a hurt person going around and hurting the next leader because now they see that next leader typically through the lens of what I did to them. And so I just think about that, right? Like typically we like carry that baggage, and you like stood against that. So that's huge. I love that. Thanks for sharing that example. That's really good.
Yeah. What's yours?
This is like a very simple one. It's not complex, but it's something that's changed my everyday. When people are late, because in certain seasons I could like care less, and then in other seasons I'm like, people are the worst. I hate it when they just can't show up. Like, just at least send me a text or a call or whatever. Like, that's been something that I'm like, people suck. People really suck. And I hate it when people don't show up or they like show up late. And I used to be really hard on that. And then I also am late. So like I should have a lot of grace for it, but like it's kind of like if I do it, it's fine. But if you do it to me, like that's not cool. And so I've had to like really reframe that. And like my first reframe, I think for that was like, oh, I'm gifted time back. Like, oh, I have now, it's like a gift. If somebody doesn't show up, then like it's a gift and I get to go like put that time towards something else. And like it was just meant to be that way. And like I get really excited about that. Like some of my best moments in life have come because somebody didn't show up for a call. Like literally, like I remember a couple of years ago, I was working remotely or like working from somewhere, and like the client didn't show up, and like me and the person next to me like had a great conversation at whatever place I was eating lunch, and like she ended up being a client, and like that would have never happened if I would have left to get on that call and never came back or never like went in there or whatever happened. So I think that was my first shift. The second one is like it's more about them than it is about me. Like I think we've talked about this a little bit. Like I think a lot of times we have the ability to be like, oh, they don't respect my time. I'm like, no, like they're just treating you how they are treating themselves. They're not respecting their time and they're not taking integrity in showing up well. So that's a them thing, not a me thing. So it actually means nothing about me and everything about them. And so I think I've been like, it like actually allows me to get to a place where I'm empathetic versus apathetic. And I just like, I can actually lend like, wow, like that's out of your character. What's going on? Like, hey, this has been a pattern. Instead of being like, they suck, you're fired next or whatever. I like, now I'm like, wow, this is out of your character. Or like, hey, this is not in alignment with our culture or whatever that case is. Or like, hey, you want to be my client, you're going to have to show up for yourself. And I think it helps me like hold people accountable and like have those difficult conversations if I'm not mad. If I'm like wrapping my shit into it, I just don't get to show up in service of them, which is what leadership is. I'm making it about me. So I think part of it's just not like doing a self internalization. Like I'm not going to internalize that and I'm not going to make it about me. I'm going to like take ownership over what I need out of that and then and then like have the hard conversation or like take the gift of them not showing up. And like, I don't put people back on my calendar if they like don't show up twice. Like, no, I'm going to take ownership. This is important to me and you're not showing up. So no, you don't get another spot. So I think that's my example. So you're kind of, we should probably close there. But if you are, yeah, if you're like feeling in a place where you feel like people suck and you're just like ultimately disappointed by a lot of people, look within. I just encourage you to take some inventory to look within and just take a second to think about like what do you have control of. I think that's where it starts. What's the narrative or the information that you have access to changing? And then how do you hold people accountable and give grace? Like both, one and the same. Like how do you step into being a support system first for yourself and then others so that you don't have to be stuck with the narrative or the information that people suck. And like you don't have to dislike people. Dogs are great, but like they don't really get a lot of work done. So you have to like learn to like people again. So if you want help with this, we literally, my tagline when I'm out and about in the world is like, we help teams like each other again. And so we'd love to help you like your team. We'd love to help you enjoy your team and not just dislike the people around you so that you can get more done and do more together because that's what's possible.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, you can find us at impactinitiative.network. Reach out to us there. We've also talked a lot about core values, core triggers, mission, vision. That's a real piece of this, is knowing what you're weighing these feelings against, and having tools that actually point you in the right direction is a big part of what we found allows you to shift that narrative. Is you actually know what the other side of the story is. It's found in your values. It's found in a clear direction and in a connection to your mission, your vision. So if, again, if you're like, yeah, I'd love to have another option. I'd love to have a different narrative to be able to take action in a different direction, to not be held captive by this story or this frustration, then we would love to be a part of that. Again, you can reach out to us at impactinitiative.network. Click the button in the top right corner. We'd love to connect with you. And until then, see you next time on Impact Minded.